get the private sector involved in this process of basically recovery and reconstruction. But this session will try to look at sort of the regional dynamics. So we looked at the context, at the actors, and now we're trying to look at the regions and the roles of the different levels of government in taking forward this challenging yet not impossible economic and a social reform agenda. And I'm very happy to have a very distinguished panel. For the interest of time, I will not go through them. You have all the information in your leaflets. But I would like to start maybe by asking Mr. Al-Jaberi, particularly that he's a member, that he's from the parliament perspective and also from Anbar. Obviously, the Iraqi economy has different needs in different regions. There is always this dialogue between the governorates and the central government. For anybody looking at Iraq from outside, we know that Iraq still is a very heavily centralized economy and state apparatus, but yet we all know that successful development requires a significant involvement of actors at the local level, both in terms of government, but also local actors, NGOs, local private sector, etc. So maybe I would like to ask you, as a politician, how do you see, is Iraq improving in terms of the relation between the central government and the local government in general? Whether you would like to talk from that perspective, a big picture, but also tell us a little bit about your own experience from the Anbar point of view.
Thank you very much, Ali, and thank you for American University for the invitation. As you mentioned, Iraq still is suffering from the centralization of the government, and unfortunately, despite all the effort from the government, from the people, from the international community who are pushing the government toward the decentralization, but till now, the decentralization is not implemented as the people they wish. In the parliament, they approved the law 21st, which which is about the decentralization of the power, and they should all the authorities from, especially they say let's start with the services ministries, like the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, Housing, Water Resources, to transfer the responsibilities to the provinces. But unfortunately, the security situation in the last 3 years in Iraq, it was very unstable. So the government think that we still need the centralization. Now, I think there is a good opportunity and to support the decentralization. As you know, we are facing the election in May 12th, the national election, and I think the new government should implement the law of the decentralization and support the formation, support the self-governance for the provincial council and each province. And we have very good example in Kurdistan region. In the KRG government, we see how they improve their local services because they succeed to attract the international companies. They succeed to attract in the last 10 years the international investor. They support them. They facilitate for them all the process. So we saw them. They have services. They have hotels. They have very nice roads. They have very good restaurant, what we need in the provinces, in the south, in the west, in the, and I am from Anbar. Still, we don't have hotel in Ramadi, till now. Still, because of the war against Daesh, now, and our hospital is totally destroyed in Ramadi. So there is no hospital, there is no services. The government, because of the drop of the oil prices, they don't have enough money to do the reconstruction. So we don't have any choice. The only thing we have in front of us to encourage the international private sector to come and start to invest and to create jobs. Now, we have a lot of unemployees percentage in Iraq, a lot of graduated students without job. The government, they have over number of employees. And as you know, the IMF, they asked the government to decrease the number of the employees, not to hire new employees. So we don't have other choice. We need to encourage the private sector to create jobs, to create the competition between the people, between the local sector, and decrease the responsibilities of the government. The government...
Of the central government.
Of the central government, yes, because the central government, they have a lot of responsibilities. If they want to deal also with the local government, they will lose everything. And we saw how is the government in the last 12 years, they are not centralized and they are not decentralized. So we have a lot of mistake inside the government, inside the provincial council, and inside the total system in Iraq. Now we have a new phase. So we have to concentrate on to implement the laws. One of these laws is the decentralization. So we have to encourage the central government should encourage the decentralization. The central government also have to facilitate the process for the international company to come to Iraq. And we saw in the Kuwait conference in the last month, we saw the number of companies, the international companies who want to come to Iraq, who want to invest in Iraq, but they are facing a lot of problems. And they told us, we want to come. The Iraqi territory is very rich with the minerals, with the water, with everything, but we are facing four issues: the bureaucracy, corruption, and the logistic thing also, to get the visa, to all these things, and the lack of the private banking and the insurance company. We don't have strong private banking and we don't have strong insurance company in Iraq. So I think it's the time to encourage the private sector. It's the time to encourage the international company to enter to Iraq and start the economic revolution in 2018 and 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Jaberi. Dr. Shaddad, since you are sitting at the center of the central government, let's say, I mean, do you agree? Do you think that the local government, the provincial governments are ready now to take
against Daesh and the victory for the unity of the country? Now we have the biggest war. It is the war of the reform of our economy. I will start or I will continue from what Dr. Jaberi mentioned. He mentioned that the decentralization wasn't implemented, but it was, and it is started, but due to security problems, due to many, economic problems, we didn't reach in very accepted, level. Let us speak, what is the vision of my government related with the decentralization? I think it is part of our government agenda. It's not part, a very important part of our agenda, because we believe with this approach we can achieve and we can reach to the development. We think the development with the centralization cannot be achieved. For this reason, I think we did many actions in this, I think, very difficult and long way. For example, now we have committee meets 4 times per year, chaired by the Prime Minister. All the governors, except KRG area, they are participating, discussing about the achieving what has happened. Many local, and many authorities of the central ministers are transferred to the local government. Because many times we think that to apply the decentralization you need, for example, building capacity, because, due to the political problems, due to social problems, many local governments, maybe they are not now ready for this very difficult approach. We started to develop the capacities of the local government, develop them, provide them with many training from which is conducted by international organizations such as the World Bank. We are providing them to exchange the experiences with another country which they have, very successful, experiences in the decentralization. And also, we think that to apply the decentralization, I think it has to be implemented gradually. I think it cannot be implemented, for example, with one package. I think we have to try with, but I think we started, for example, now the municipal affairs, 90% from them are transferred to the local government. I think in the next month, the authority of Minister of Education also will be transferred to the local government. But when we believe in the decentralization, this doesn't mean that we have to transfer all the authority of the local, of the central government. I think there are many issues such as the national security, the issue of the foreign affairs. I think these issues, because are related with the strategy of the country, has to be controlled and managed by the central government.
Absolutely, Mr. Shaddad, I agree with you. There's always a right balance between the central and the local government level, and we're going to get back to this.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, let me to continue.
Okay, sure.
Yes. But as I told you, the issue of decentralization is one of our important aims and strategy we have to implement. Let me give you some example what we are doing in order to rise the level of the decentralization and the application. For example, now we develop, I think my colleagues in the previous session, they spoke about the investment and the investors who are coming to do investment in Iraq. They are facing many problems due to bureaucracy, corruption, funding something. So now, since 3 months, we developed a new higher committee chaired by the Prime Minister with another 4
ministers, this committee shorthand the authority and the power of all the cabinet, all the ministers. Through this committee, we are reducing, we have reduction of the bureaucracy, reduction the waste of the time that the investors need to pass in order to take the certificate of the investment. One of the, when we are meeting to approve or to discuss any investment project, we put some criteria for selection of this investment project. The most important, what the effect or the result of this investment project in the building capacity. So in order to rise the level of the readiness of our local authority for this thing. So now when we are evaluating any investment project, we are doing evaluation about what this new investment project will bring us related with the building capacity, because we think this is very important issue in order to do the decentralization. Another example, for example, since 4 days, Dr. Kamal, I think he's witness about that, His Excellency signed a declaration about decision to development, higher committee for Basra development. Now, we think that Basra, as part of Iraq, needs more development, and I think it deserves that. For example, in our committee, this committee will be chaired by the Prime Minister, but all the people who are working, who will participate in this committee will be from Basra, because we think the people of Basra, they are the best people who know what their city need or something. So I think we started in the decentralization, and as Dr. Jaberi mentioned, due to security problems, economic problems, but this will not be obstacles for us to continue these big things, because this is part of my government belief, my government agenda, but this need some understanding and something. I think to compare I agree, our people in Kurdistan, they did a lot of achievement, but I think the opportunities that they have in Kurdistan, maybe they are not similar with us. Kurdistan started their development way since, I think, 1991. And in our case, I think we can, everything happened before 2017 was, I think, problems, wars, conflict. So I think the way for us will be very bright and very easy, yes.
And let me here, since we mentioned Kurdistan, turn to Mr. Ali and ask him exactly, I mean, where can the Kurdistan economic model and experience in terms of self-governance, in terms of delivery of services, what are the lessons learned if you were to say to your colleagues from other regions that this is what we did right, and what would you say are the things you did wrong?
سپاس دەکەم، سپاس بۆ زانکۆی ئەمریکی. ڕەنگە من باشتر بتوانم تعبیر لە دۆخی کوردستان بکەم تا برادران. ڕەنگە من باشتر بتوانم تعبیر لە دۆخی حکومڕانی هەرێمی کوردستان کەم تاوەکو برادران، و ئەم بابەتەی کوردستان ڕەبتەکەمەوە بە دوو بابەتێکی دیکە کە دیسانەوە پەیوەندی بەم قەزیەوە هەیە، لامەرکەزیەت و گەشەپێدانی ئابووری لە ڕێگەی کەرتی تایبەتەوە لە وڵاتە نەوتیەکانی هاوشێوەی عێراق و هاوشێوەی کوردستان ڕاستەوخۆ پەیوەستە بێتەوە بە دۆسیەی نەوتەوە، و دیدی ئێمە لە ڕابردووە و لە ئێستا شاوایە بەبێ بۆچوونی ئێمە بۆچوونی ئێمەوا بووە لە عێراق و لە کوردستانیشەوە ئەو دەوڵەتانەی هاوشێوەی ئێمە دەوڵەتی نەوتین بەبێ ئیسلاحکردن لە سێکتەری نەوتە زۆر ئەستەمە لەلایەک لامەرکەزیەت بچەسپێ وە گەشەپێدان لە کەرتە ئابوووریەکانی دیکەشە دەسەبەر بکوێت ڕەنگە ئەمان دیوێکی حکومڕانی لە هەرێمی کوردستانە ببینن جیاواز لە ئێمەمانان کە ئیشی تیاکەین ئەو دیوانەی دری لە حکومڕانی لە هەرێمی کوردستانە نەبینن دیسانەوە تاکی دەکەوە من هەوڵەدەم هەم لا مەرکەزت هەم گەشەپێدانی ئابووری لە کوردستان وەک نمونەوەرگرم بیبەسمەوە بە کەیسی نەوتەوە چونکە نەوت هۆکاری یەکەم بووە لەوەی لامەرکەزیەت دروست نەبووە و هۆکاری یەکەم بووە لەوەی گەشەپێدانی ئابووری دروست نەبووە حکوومەتێکی بەهێز وە کەرتی تایبەت زۆر لاواز بووە ئەگەر سەیری دەوڵەتانی دەوروبەریشمان کەین لەو دەوڵەتەی کە زۆرترین بەرەمهێنانی نەوتە لە سعودی عێراق ئیمارات ئێران ئەنگۆلا کۆیت ئەمانە نەوت نەبوو بە ڕەحمەت بە پێچەوانەی ئەوە لە بری ئەوەی بێن استثمار لە توانە بەشەریەکانە بکەین چون استثمارمان کرد لە سامانی ژێر زەویە ئەمە وای کرد کۆمەڵە کشتی بەدەستێنا بە هەرێمی کوردستانەوە دواتر وردە وردە ڕوونیەکەمەوە بە دڵنیاییەوە هەرێمی کوردستان ئەو دیوەگەشە نییە کە باس کرانی ئەو دیوەگەشە نییە لە حکومڕانی نەوت لە کوردستانە دیسان تاکی دەکەمەوە حکومڕانی لە کوردستانە دابەشە بێ بەسەر سێ قۆناغا قۆناغی یەکەم لە ساڵی 1990 تا 2003 ناتوانین بڵێن حکومڕانی هەبووە شێوە بەڕێوەبردنێکە بووە خەڵک توانیوێتی بژی لەولاوە شەڕ هەبووە شەڕی ناوخۆ هەبووە قۆناغێکی خراپ بووە قۆناغی دووەمی حکومڕانی کە ئەمە تا ڕادەیەک گەشەپێدانێکی ئابووری تیا بەدەستێت ساڵی 2003 تا 2014 کە لەگەڵ عێراق ڕێکەوتنیەکەیە بەشە بودجەیەک لە بەغداوە دێت بەشێکی خەرجەکرێت بەشێکی خراپ خەرجەکرێت شێوە گەشەپێدانێ لەم ڕوانگە بووە لە دوای 2014ەوە کاتێ نەوت دیسانەوە حکومەکاتەوە نێتێک دروستە بێ بە ناوی ئابووری سەربەخۆ بۆ فرۆشتنی نەوت هەرێمی کوردستان تووشی قەیرانە بێتەوە دۆشەکەی من لێرا دەست پێکە نەوت لە هەرێمی کوردستانە هەندێکەڵێن نەفرەتی نەوت هەندێکەڵێن نەفرەتی سەرچاوە سروشتەکان بۆ هەندێک دەوڵەت من ناومناوە خوێنی شەیتان چۆن خوێنی شەیتان ئەم خوێنی شەیتانە ئەبێ بەهۆی ئەوەی کە کۆی ئاکایە ئابوووریەکانی تری تووشی تێکشکان کرد کەرتی تایبەتی تووشی داڕوخان کرد دەرفەتی کە توانە مرۆیەکانی بە تەواوەتی پەکخست میلیشای چەکداری دروست کرد حکوومەتی بچووک کردەوە مافیای نەوتی دروست کرد و وڵاتی خستە ژێرباری قەرزێکی زۆرەوە کە هەستانەوەی زۆر قورس بێ کەواتە لێرە نەوت بە تەنیا نەفرەت نەبوو نەک ڕەحمەت نەبوو بۆ نمونەوەکو نەرویجا ئالاسکایی بەڵکو بوو بە خوێنی شەیتان کۆی کایەکانی دیکە داڕوکێنی ئێمە ئەگەر لە هەرێمی کوردستان طبعا عێراقیش هەمان مشکلە هەیە عێراقیش ئێستا بەوەی سیاسەتی نەوتەوە بۆتە ژێرباری قەرزێکەوە نزیکەی 130 میلیارد دۆلارە هەرێمی کوردستانیش بۆتە ژێرباری قەرزێکەوە نزیکەی 27 میلیارد دۆلارە و توانای دانەوەشی نییە وای کرد کە ئێمە سیستەمێکی حکومڕانی دیموکراتمان نەبێت هێزی چێکدار لەژێر دامەزراوەکانی دەوڵەتان نەبێ تەمویلی ئەدەواتی قەمح کراوە تەمویلی مەسەن ئەو کەرەستانە کراوە کە ببێتە هۆی هێز بەتایبەتی هێزە معارەزەکان بەکارهێنراوە ئەم سەروەی نەفتیە بۆ ڕەشوە
على الصعيد الاقتصادي in terms of the economics so if we can continue
no, I understand no problem بۆ کاری ئەمە وای کرد حکوومەت بێخەم بێ لە بوشانەوەی سێرجەم سێکتەرە ئابوووریەکانی دیکە پیشەسازی کشت و کاڵ تەنیا اعتیمادکردن لەسەر نەوت لە پێناوی وەدەستێنانی زۆرترین پارە و کەمترین مەسروف و ئەمە لە نەتیجە لە ڕووی دیبلۆماسیشەوە هەرێمی کوردستان تووشی تێکشکانەکان لە تازەترین بابەتە لێکۆڵەرێکی ئەمریکی کتێبێکی نووسی وە 120 لاپەڕێ لەسەر دۆسەی نەوتی کوردستان کە دەیان فەزاحەتی نەوتی ئاشکرا کردووە لە گرێبەستەکانە لەو پارانەی وەکو بۆنس بۆ پرۆژە وەرگیرا و دیار نەماوە لە نەتیجە ئەعلامێکی چاواشەکار دروستەکە هێزێکی چەکدار دروستەکە ڕێگە لە گەشەپێدانی ئابووریەکە و قەزیە دروست نابێت و زیاتر لەمە چی بکەین بۆ ئەوەی
فما هو what is the role of then the local parliament in adjusting these deficiencies that you are talking about at the local level because obviously this is the local democracy that the KRG is claiming that I mean, is working. So how, can you tell us a little bit about the role of the local parliament in adjusting these misallocation of resources in Kurdistan?
من وەکوتم نەوت کاتێک کە ئەستەمکاری بەرەمەهێنرێت هێزی چەکدار حکومەکە زۆر ئەستەمە پەرلەمان و مؤسسە دیموکراتی و ڕقابیەکان ڕۆڵیان هەبێت من دکتۆر شێرکۆ هاوڕێم پەرلەمانتارە لێرە دەیان کەیسمان جوڵاندووە لە پەرلەمان لە محکەمە لە بانکردنی وەزیر تەنانەت 4 مانگەیەمە لەسەر دۆسیەی نەوت بانگێشتی سەرۆکی حکومەت و جێگرەکەی ئامادە نین بێنە پەرلەمان بۆ ئەوەی جوابی پرسیارەکانی خەڵک بنەوە ئەم داهاتانی نەوت چیت بەسەرات بۆ کەوتی نەژێر قەرزەوە زیاتر لەمە مەسەن بۆ نمونە 2 مانگە بە عەلەنی نەوتە فرۆشتێ ڕۆژانە نزیکەی 670,000 بەرمیلە هیچ بڕەپارەیەک نەگەڕاوەتەوە بۆ کوردستان و ئێستا 7 ڕۆژە فەرمانبەری کوردستان نیوەی موچەکەی وەرگرتووە من پێم وایە چارەسەر حل سەلوشن بۆ بەدا پێویستە بۆ ئەوەی هەم عێراق هەم کوردستان و هەم کەرتی تایبەت گەشە بکە لا مەرکەزیەت بەدەست بێ پێویستە سێکتەری نەوت بەدامەزراوەی بکرێت لە دۆزینەوە و بەرەمهێنانەوە لە فرۆشتنەوە لە گەڕانەوەی پارەکەوە لە خەرجکردنیەوە ئێستا لە کوردستان هەمووی لە ژێردەستی 2 کەسایە دوو بەکارهێنانی بەشێکی گرنگی داهاتی نەوت بۆ گەشە پێدانی سێکتەرە ئابوووریەکان شەفافیەت و یاسا سەروەری پێدانی ڕۆڵ بە پارێزگارەکان لە چاودێریکردنی پرۆسەی نەوت و لە بەڕێوەبردنە کە ئێستا من پێم وایە لە عێراق و لە کوردستان هیچ ڕۆڵێکیان نییە دەسەڵات بدرێت بە پارێزگار و هەرێمەکان لە داڕشتنی نەخشەی وەبەرهێنانە خاریتەی ئیستثماری زۆر گرنگە بۆ نمونە جۆرە ئیستثمارە لە پارێزگای سلێمانی مهمە جۆرێکی تر لە ئەنبار مهمە ئەمە پارێزگارەکانە بێ سەرپەرشتی ئەمە بکەن زیاتر لە حکوومەتی مەرکەزی شەشەم دەوڵەت تەنیا سەرپەرشتی پلانی استراتیژی وەبەرهێنانەکان نەک لایەنی منەفیز بێت وەکەوەی لە کوردستانی عێراق ئابیدین سێم پێداچوونەوە بە سیاسەتی باجا بکرێت پلانێک استراتیژیدان ڕێژێت بۆ ئەوەی ساڵ بە ساڵ ڕێژەی بەشداری داهاتی نەوت لە بودجاکەم بێتەوە چکە ئێسەیەکە لە ڕەخنەکانی سندوقی دراوی نێودەوڵەتی ئەوەیەکە کەمبوودی داهاتی خەیرە نەوتیە بۆیە من پێم وایە ئەم دۆخە لە حکومڕانی ئەگەر بەم شێوەیە بەردەوام بێت لە کوردستان و عێراقا کە پشت بەستن بە نەوت بەبێ دامەزراوە بەبێ شەفافیت بەبێ یاسا سەروەری و دروستبوونی مافیای نەوتی هەرێم و کوردستان و عێراقیش لە ئایندەیەکی بۆ کوردستان ڕەنگە نزیکتر بێ بۆ عێراق ڕەنگە دوورتر بێ هەردووکیان تووشی داڕوخانە.
Well, we hope that this will not be definitely the path, but the path of reform that we are taking. And this is why I think it's important to bring an international perspective into this discussion. And maybe I'll start with Monsieur Sylvain Dubois, who is the Vice President of the Institute of Governance. I mean, obviously, most of what we just heard right now is really about the importance of local governance, whether administrative governance, whether financial governance, in order to ensure that basically the service delivery and the development outcomes at the local level are happening. From your own experience, I mean, whether in Iraq or working elsewhere around the world, supporting local government capacity building, what would you say are sort of the key issues that in Iraq needs to be in place in order to ensure that the local government is properly capable of shouldering the development agenda?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the IRIS for this conference, and thank you for inviting us here. Maybe I will start with the 5 principles of good governance that we have developed at the Institute, which are based on international standards of such principles. So the first principle is legitimacy and voice. That means that what is the state's ability to exercise power and the acceptance of that exercise of power by the public because they think it is legitimate. So who gets voice in the decisions of government? And if enough people get a voice, then people accept the decisions of government as acceptable and will not resist even if they don't like them. The second principle is direction and purpose. So if you, as a government, want to act and do something, you have to tell people what direction you're taking. You have to explain where you're going. And maybe that's one weakness of Law 21, where 10 years later, not much has happened in terms of decentralization. Why? Because a lot of people don't understand what decentralization means, what federalism means. A lot of people purported to be in favor of decentralization but have acted as centralists in Baghdad. So 10 years later, we're just beginning to really decentralize with Prime Minister Abadi. Before that, maybe people didn't really believe in decentralization, would be my guess, but maybe I'm wrong. Direction and purpose, very important to tell people where you're taking them so they follow you. And another example is Mr. Abadi, who said, I want to make corruption, war against corruption my next war after ISIS war, okay? Yes, but how are you going to do that, sir? What are the steps you're going to take so that people will follow you? People will also watch that you actually carry out those steps. So that comes to the third principle, is effective performance. So when you start something, you have to do it with efficiency. And the fourth principle is transparency and accountability. So if you do direction and purpose, you explain your direction and the purpose of what you're doing, then that gives a leg for people to hold you accountable to have delivered on what you promised. And then the final principle is fairness and ethical behavior, which deals with the corruption issue. And you need fair and equitable state behavior, and you need ethical behavior on the part of public office holders, be they elected holders or public servants. Now, what does that mean for Iraq? Well, it means, for example, I was at the Kuwait conference, and they talked about the war against corruption, they talk about the fast track, and they talk about a one-stop shop. Now, those were announced as if they were a done deal, but it's not a done deal. There was an order of the Council of Ministers to create those things, but to implement that and to get that through the bureaucracy so that when an investor comes and he's going to a one-stop shop and he has to go only to one place and not to 10, or is it going to be 10 plus 1, like as before? Someone told me the story, that there was a one-stop shop, but it only added one more stop to the shop, right? So we don't want that. You want a one-stop shop. Investors will... I was there in Kuwait, and I heard it from several mouths, from private sector, from in other countries. They were saying corruption and bureaucratic hassles have to be gotten rid of if this is going to be a success in bringing investment to Iraq. Decentralization, in our view, brings the decision-making to the closest to citizens. And I hear you use local government. I don't like it, because to me a local government is a municipal government. I think we have to use proper words, and we are talking about decentralization to provincial governments or governorates. Yeah. And in that regard, I guess the KRG has not been better than Baghdad in decentralizing to its governorates. It has not decentralized. It's quite a centralized government in the KRG, as it is in Baghdad. So we've begun decentralization, but people thought that the law of 2008, Law 21, which enacted decentralization of 8 ministries, that's been reduced to 6 now. 6 ministries were to be decentralized. They thought that this was a magic wand. They passed the law and decentralization is achieved. But we know bureaucrats, like I'm a practitioner of bureaucracy, been in bureaucracy for 32 years in the federal bureaucracy of Canada, and I know that the law is just the beginning of something. It's enabling. So you have to implement that decentralization. You have to convince the bureaucrats to let go federally, and you have to prepare the provincial bureaucrats to assume those authorities, etc. But one thing is important to be reminded is that those ministries of Law 21 are under the Constitution within the provincial area of legislative jurisdiction, not the federal. So they belong to the provinces. So it's only normal that they be decentralized to the provinces. The IOG is doing a pilot project now with 2 governorates, Misan and Diwaniyah, to identify gaps that there are in the provinces in their ability to assume the new responsibilities that they have. So you have people that all of a sudden get 60,000 Ministry of Education employees that they didn't have before. Like, how can they handle that just overnight? It's a lot of change that they have to assume. So we're identifying gaps. We're going to provide training. We're creating a center of excellence so that people can be trained there, and we will accompany them through that decentralization, and we hope to be able to scale that to other governorates. So but we think that decentralization is the key. I heard this morning the Isham, who was sitting in this seat at the first panel. He said, ISIS didn't change anything. They just changed the name and the address on the name of ministries. When you don't have decentralization and distributed, what we call distributed governance, that is governance that is distributed among levels of government and several people, you just cut the top off, replace the top, and you just continue to run it as it was before. When you have distributed governance and you have a central government, you have a province, and you have municipal councils and governors and mayors, then you cannot just cut the top off and run it as you have to cut all these people off. So distributed governance is a protection of democracy, and it brings decision-making closer to people, which is a better proposition for sustainable development than a centralized system. People here are afraid that decentralization is weakening Iraq. In our view, decentralization will strengthen Iraq, will give it the ability to use all its forces and make it stronger.
No, absolutely. I mean, the debate about, particularly in states that are used to central government and heavy central planning, will always be this reticence, obviously, to move in the path of decentralization. But I want to get to front because obviously, I mean, you as an expert of sort of looking at the political economy of Iraq, and you've written about it extensively, and you've taught in this university about this topic. I mean, it is often said that that when you decentralize or you basically relinquish power to lower levels of governance in what is already a weak governance environment where corruption is very high. Take Indonesia, for example. I worked in Indonesia when I was at the World Bank, and that was really the fear, is that if you have corruption at the top in central government, decentralization could actually just help decentralizing further corruption. So how can we avoid that in the context of Iraq? And what do you think are really the powers at play in terms of political economy factors that can make tilt the balance between success and failure in terms of development outcomes?
And Ali, I have 40 minutes, is that right?
No, just
let me take advantage of having tenure and respectfully disagree with every other panelist who has spoken here. Decentralization, the way it's being treated here, is taking authority, taking powers from the national government and passing it to the provinces. Some people speak about passing it to the local level. Maybe that's a mistake. And this might lead to greater transparency. It might lead to more efficient government. But I think the net effect would be very small, What we're looking at is the problem that, Mr. Hussein spoke about. He said, we need a revolution. We need a revolution. And what he was talking about, I think they have a slide on this up there, but Iraq is one of the most hostile countries in the world when it comes to the regulation of private businesses. It ranks worldwide 168 out of the 180-something countries that were ranked. It is a bad place to start a business, to get electricity, to get credit, to protect minority investors, to pay taxes, to enforce contracts, and it is the worst in the world, considering the competition, that says something, the worst in the world at resolving an insolvency. So this is where Mr. Hussein was saying we need a revolution. This has two effects. First of all, you've made it almost extremely difficult and extremely expensive to run a formal private business. And secondly, a strong incentive for corruption. If I want to build a warehouse in Baghdad, it takes me 167 days, not to build the warehouse, but to get permission to build the warehouse. Or I can put $600 in an envelope, give it to the right person, and I'll have permission within 2 weeks. So it not only legally makes it hard to run a private business, but it motivates corruption. 13 years ago, we were talking about this, 2005, 13 years ago, I was in a panel discussion with a series of top-level Iraqi smart people, Iraqi officials, and we were talking about exactly the same issues. And Christine, are you going to invite me back in 2030? Are you going to invite me back in 13 more years to discuss these issues again? What are the options? I'd like to consider something that hasn't been discussed, and that is the idea of maybe we ought to go to a special economic zone. For the students who don't have familiarity with that, a special economic zone is you take a geographic area. It could be in Sulaimaniyah, it could be in Anbar, and that geographic area will have its own economic rules. You can relax the commercial code. Rather than having the commercial code of Iraq, you could have the commercial code of the UAE. You could relax the labor laws. Instead of having the labor laws of Iraq, you could have the labor laws of the United States, which allows you to fire at will. You could have a true one-stop within, that if you wanted to do the business in the special economic zone in China, they had a 3-day rule. You submitted your request. If the government didn't respond within 3 days, your request was granted. Okay. The director of a special economic zone would not be a politician, would probably not be an Iraqi. Hire some German consulting firm, hire some Swiss consulting firm to manage the SOE. Services, electricity, water, and the special economic zones have been provided at cost, at average cost, not as it is now with effectively free. These special economic zones act as a laboratory, they act as an incubator. They show what works and what doesn't work. So instead of doing the impossible revolution that Mr. Hussein was talking about, that we're going to change the laws across Iraq on Monday and then see what happens, let's experiment with SE's special economic zones, see what works, see what doesn't work, modify it. And what happened in China was the special economic zones ate the rest of the country. China saw that these small zones were so successful, they established more, and then they extended the special economic zones to the entire country. So I think that the issue that was raised by Mr. Hussein is critical, that if you want to have the private sector, it shouldn't be just a decentralization where you're moving responsibilities from the national government to the provincial government or to the local governments. It should be where you're pulling back the harsh regulations, you're pulling back these very detailed rules, a decentralization where you're providing space for the private sector. Is it guaranteed success? Absolutely not. But I think it has a high priority that will reduce the chances that Christine will have to invite me back in another 13 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. But maybe,
Thank you.
I don't know how much time do we have, but maybe on this issue, I would like to ask Mr. Jaberi again. I mean, are Iraqi politicians ready to let go? I mean, because that's the question. I mean, you're saying we want to give more functions and roles to provincial government, but you really don't want to have the same problem that you're facing at the central level being at the local level. So, and we all know why bureaucracies become a burden, because the bureaucrats want power, and power is through exercising these sort of authority over spending, over giving licenses, etc. So how comfortable are you as an Al-Abadi, but also as a provincial, as an MP and a provincial policymaker, that at the local level, we could not go into the same kind of problems again?
You know, I agree in some point but it's not the wish of the government that it's okay, it's working. Yeah. The problem, it's...
Yeah.
The politician in Iraq, I think, they want the economy to grow up. I think we have a prime minister, he is the most prime minister who encouraged the private sector, and he tried to facilitate the work of the private sector and the decentralization. But unfortunately, our system, the sectarian division in Iraq, killed any project in Iraq. Now, in the next election, I hope, the politicians, they have to look to the future of the Iraq, to the future of the new generation, to the future of the young people. They have to stop this sectarian division, that this ministry to the Shia, this ministry to the Kurd, this ministry to the Sunnah, they have to stop this. They have, if they want to do the decentralization, to cancel all the nomination for the ministries who are decentralized. They should not exist in the next government. So automatically they transfer the power to the provincial council and to the governor of this province. This, maybe it's difficult in this, but they have to start. If they want to build a nation, if they want to build the institution in Iraq, they have to start. Now the prime minister in Iraq, I think if he did not have the war against Daesh, he was started this institution. He was, but we are not lucky to have him as a prime minister, and he did a very good job in the military side, but he couldn't concentrate on all the aspects, on the economy, on the military side, on the security side, and on the political side, because he didn't have enough support from the Iraqi politician. So we need political agreement from all the politicians to sign an agreement, political agreement, ethical agreement, to stop this sectarian and to put the right man in the right place.
Okay, so maybe before we continue the discussion, I'll open it a little bit to questions, and as you answer the question, but تفضل Mr. Shattan.
Some clarification.
Yes, please.
I want to answer the professor. Yes, I think with the situation doesn't mean that you will reduce the corruption. I think in Iraq we have very bad experiences. 7 governors from different governorates, they were sacked due to the corruption. I think Dr. Jaberi knows. Baghdad, the governor of Baghdad before 2 years was sacked. Basra, Anbar, Mosul, Diyala. So I think we believe that nation sure will strengthen the development, strengthen the power of the government, but don't put a dream that with the federation we can reduce the corruption. I think this. I guess I want. Yes, I want.
Provincial politicians, like governors, at least had to flee, or they were accused and convicted. Federal politicians who are corrupt were not even accused, did not flee, and did not suffer any consequence of corruption. So because of the fractiousness of political parties, and because political parties then just suppress information about these incidents. Exactly. So like to say that provinces are more corrupt than the federal government may be not the right, may not be true. Let's put it as I'm not sure, but it may not be true. And I don't think I don't fear greater corruption provincially than exists in the country right now. It's ranked 168 on I don't know how many countries as on 183 as an index of corruption. So it's not it cannot fall
at all levels.
exactly. So I don't know, but I would say that decentralization will shift, will change the dynamics and will change the corruption patterns, if nothing else. And you may be able to prevent corruption from going down to the provincial level.
So very quickly, Mr. Ali, because we'd like to open it for question. Or
يستم حكومات وكو حكومات خليك نامينه مؤسسه اهليه كان بروسي برو بردن دروستا كان بو نمونه ل 2007 بو استادهاتي نوت لكردستان اجاتا نزيكي 7 مليار دولار ام 7 مليار دولار انا تناو هيك بانكيكي حكوميه اشيتا بانكيكي اهلي وهيك مؤسسيكيش رقيبنيه يك 7 مليار دولار دهاتي نوت بو يك اي فورورد بينينيا اما دعم فسادك اما ريغريكا لويكا سلطه لدست شنكسيكا بوكاتيكا السلطه كويت دست شنكسيكا ناهيلن ريغنادن محافظه كان ريغنادن انجمني باريزغا كان روليان هبيت بو اوي ام باريان لينا سينريتوا ديس انو تاكيد كمو اسل كردستان بفورما عامكي حكومتنا ما وزير بيوست بيبرسين دهاتي نوت كوا لكويل منيش نازام يك دوكا سزان ناين دهاتك ديارنيا واتا حكومتش بمعنى حكومتك انما حزب يقدوكسش الأحزاب كان بتواتي خوي يسأل كردستان اقتصاد وايلات وبريتيا لنوت بريتيا لنوت بريتيا لنوت وداراي نوت هاد نوت ويكاتك أمانة كويت دس يقدوك سوا وكسر رقابنية بسريانة وناشيل بكار بين ريتوا بو تنمية مشاريع راستك لشان صالك قش بيدان رويدا ولا كردستان بلام 4 سالا بردي بناغي هيج بروجي كينو لهريمي كردستان دا ننجاوا او بروجه كون كان كاتك بارا لبغداوه بلان كبزنس ونوتي تيكوت بيغمان هريمي كردستان من بويوتم لا اينديكي نسيكترا ام بردو خبر دوام بتوشي دارو خاني دوري.
Thank you.
Laws, for example, the financial management law is very weak in Iraq.
Yes, we're going to get to that. I'll ask you, but maybe we'll profit to focus on these issues as we get some questions, please.
Yeah.
Here. I'm going to take 3 questions, answers, 3 more questions.
Start with 3 students, Madam.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, start with 3 students.
3 students,
this time.
exactly. I don't
Yes.
know if you are a student.
Well, we're all students of life then. Well, I have 2 very quick questions. My first question goes to Mr. DuBois, which is around decentralization. In a country or region where people are hungry for power at the local level, do you still think decentralization is the solution? Mm-hmm. My second question, very quick to Mr. Mushtatat, who is the advisor of the Prime Minister. Well, you talked about the fact that it's in your agenda to have decentralization being implemented in Iraq. Now, the concern that I think we all have in this region is Iraq wants to run like our airports in Kurdistan centrally. Iraq wants to pay salaries from Baghdad centrally. Iraq wants to run the borders centrally. Iraq wants to kind of own the oil export centrally. Is this a move towards centralization or decentralization? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please, the students, who is a student? Yeah, please. Yeah. No. Yeah, a related question. Then Mr. Kamal. Go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, it's not kind of a question what I have. I mean, what I
try to make it a question.
That's what I do,
yeah.
awfully. What I ask, I mean, right now in Iraq, decentralization looks better because we have corruption everywhere, and the central government has no chance with going on in this route. So if it was decentralization, as we are talking about, wouldn't it be better that we have separate sectors to have the corruption rather than the all government? That's the question.
We will do a Ministry of Corruption, I think. Mr. Kamal, and then we'll take 3 more questions.
Well, we have an integrity commission.
I am pro-decentralization.
A question, please.
I am worried that a country without rule of law or weak rule of law and accountability, decentralization is a problem. Would you kindly give us example on a country that have no accountability and weak rule of law, decentralization is flourished?
Okay, so this is great because most of the questions circle around basically the nexus between decentralization and corruption. And maybe also a question to you, Mr. Shattat, about, I mean, are you really serious about decentralization?
Yes, but okay, so this question that it mentioned, provincial people are hungry for more power, implies that they're hungry for it for bad reasons. So for corruption, for the ability to put money in their pocket. Of course, this is not the right thing, and if there are corrupt people, don't elect them at your provincial, at the head of your province. People are in public office have to be there for the public good. What we are saying is if they have these 5 principles of good governance, and that includes transparency, that includes accountability, that includes the rule of law, of course, you have better government if you have distributed governance and decentralization or subsidiarity, as they say in Europe, to the lower level of government possible, as close to the citizen as possible. And it comes to the second part of your question. You mentioned 2 or 3 areas that are obviously federal jurisdiction. Customs of a country has to be federal, cannot be provincial. It's an international transfer, so it has to be federal. Customs in airports has to be federal. Passport control in international travel in airports, passport control has to be federal. It's the entry into a country. So no sub-level of government should be in control of that. These are federal powers. They should be federal powers. They are in every federation. So they should be in this country. There was an anomaly here in Kurdistan for a short while, and that has been stopped. And I think that the 2 levels of government are working together to see what kind of arrangements they will have so that the international flights may reopen here. But like the border control, passport control is obviously a federal jurisdiction.
Very quickly, on the question, are there good examples that you see around the world?
Of course not, because he's giving me 3 elements of bad governance that cannot produce. You know, good governance is not a guarantee of success for a country, but it is an essential ingredient. Yeah. There is no successful country in the world that has bad governance.
Mr. Shattat, very quickly an answer, and we have more questions.
Despite the aggressive mood of your question, you know, I don't change, you know, the atmosphere, because now, you know, all the problems are going to be solved, yes. But I will answer with very short answer. This is the constitution that was approved and elected by all the Iraqi people. And also I know that all the people of KRG, they approved this constitution, which includes such issues. So this is my answer.
Okay, please, let's take on this, 2 on this side. Let's first, can I get a student and I get back to you? Sorry, but just Because I'm asked to ask students. No, behind you.
Must be a grad student.
I'll get back to you, Ustaz.
Well, hello. I'm not a student, but I'm a journalist. Student Al-Ameerikiyya. Is that okay if I continue?
Sure.
All right, okay. My question goes to Mr. Gunther in particular and to the rest of the panel in general. Mr. Gunther discussed the idea of the special economic zone, like talked about specificities of these zones, like including questions of like implementing rules like for the workers and everything, like right to fire at will, etc., etc. So as much as like maybe this could be a solution to tackle sectarian strife and also corruption that everyone agrees needs to be addressed, isn't there also a risk to see in these kind of zones like how do you say that? Exploiting workers in a bad way? Like there are also negative impacts to those special economic zones that we can see in Southeast Asia and like countries like Bangladesh and other places that have, or India, that have become manufacturing enclaves within the government, within the country, where workers are exploited. So that's an issue I would like to see.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the lady here. No lady. Want ladies?
Hello. I'm Gariba. I'm an entrepreneur. I work with 5 Labs. I have a question. We always complain about the government, but here I just want to ask a question. Is it the only way to get support from government and to start a production line? What about our faults as population?
Good question. Is it the responsibility? One more behind you, and 3, and then here in front.
Jafar Sadiq, B Corp. My question, I think it's somewhat of a question, somewhat of a comment. Have we really considered, how, one second, let me just get the right question there. Have we considered how centralized policy and bureaucracy benefits existing enterprises? We've always been talking about government, how it's already benefiting the existing enterprises, and the lack of competition and lack of offering space for international, more innovative companies and sometimes even local companies with less wealth. During, I think, the majority of our seminars, we're always discussing the lack of funding and lack of accessibility to funding, which I don't think large enterprises have an issue with, because that's maintaining the status quo. So have we taken into consideration of why it's not in the interest of businesses, likewise government? And we haven't really built a strong relationship between government and large enterprises, which is a marriage relationship, which is similar to the first seminar or the first panel, where we compared, let's say, militant groups that are against each other. I think we've got a similar relationship, but not similar in militancy, between government and business. Business influences government, government influences business. They both have quite a bit of mutual interests. So just to look at things through that angle, I think.
Okay, great. Let's go for another round. Gunther,
I thought we were going to go for this young student in the front row.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. We want to hear his question. كلام عينك. تفضل.
Basit Abdullah, former member of Iraqi Parliament. My comment is that let me please. The Iraqi Constitution was approved, as Sir Salah said, about the 80% of the Iraqi people are voted to the Constitution. There are many articles of the Constitution. Till now, they are not translated into the laws to be achieved by the Iraqi government. For example, the Article 110, it contains the exclusive authorities of the Iraqi government. And the Constitution says that other authorities are the authorities of the governors and the regions. And there is Article 105, which says that a committee or a body will be formed to monitor the distribution of the federal posts among the Iraqi people of the governance. And there is another article, which is 106, which says that a committee or a body will be formed for monitoring the distribution of the Iraqi budget among the Iraqi people. Till now, this is not. Also, the Article 112, which says that the management of the oil will be between the Iraqi government and the regions, and the governances are not arranged in a region. And my question is to Mr. Salah, who says that the law of the governors are not arranged in a region, law 21 in 2008. This law is enacted in 2008. Now we are in 2018. Till now, this law is not implemented. Why?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let me ask first Frank, to start with the question on the SEZ, and anybody, maybe Mr. Jabri, to respond on the question of the responsibility of the citizens, if possible. Frank.
Okay, the question about the exploitation, the possible exploitation of the workers, very interesting one. I guess the SES, the special economic zones that have avoided this, have pretty much had two things. First of all, rolling contracts, where the German or the Swiss firm or whoever's managing the SEC has a 10-year contract renewed every 5 years. So if it turns out that the government of Baghdad or the provincial government of wherever it's located decides that the special economic zone is not providing benefit to the society, then they don't renew the contract. The other, as far as the workers, it's voluntary to work in a special economic zone. If you have the option of having all the protections of a very detailed labor code, which Iraq has, and being unemployed, or being employed in an SEC, special economic zone, where you may not have those protections, isn't that a decision that the individual worker should be able to make for him or herself? Thank you.
One of the main issues with special economic zones is going to be to pick the winners. Yeah. Where is it going to be? Is it going to be in Anbar? Is it going to be in Basra? Is it going to be in Kurdistan? Is it going to be in Diwaniyah? Where is it going to be? Yeah. And that's going to be a problem.
And I think here, if I may put my cent of comment, here in our region, in the Arab world, we always try to use this, what I think is really a misunderstood concept of balanced regional development, al-inma al-mutawazin, as if all the regions should be developed in the same way and receive the same investment. Today, all countries that have thrived and that have been able to develop very fast, particularly in East Asia, but also in Europe, is where government collectively, whether they are federal or non-federal government, decided to create what we call growth poles, because these parts of their territory has all the resources, the human capital, the connectivity that it will create a bigger spillover effect onto the rest of the economy. So this idea of trying to distribute al-manafa and the investment across the territory is actually often a misallocation of resources. But maybe Mr. Al-Jaberi, on the responsibility of the citizens, the question of the lady, I mean, why do we always blame government? I mean, don't we have also a responsibility for us as a population? What would you tell your voters?
Yeah, you know, in Iraq, still we don't have the culture for donation, to do donation, to encourage the private small business and medium business. Still the citizen depend on the government, on the services, on the finance, on the everything. In the outside, in the West and in the United States, you find NGOs who are caring about the young generation, about the young businessman. In Iraq, we don't have this culture still. The NGOs, they are very limited, and their role is very limited, and they depend on the outside financing. We don't have the culture for people to make donation to the NGOs. Why? Because outside the country, if any businessman or any company give donation to any NGOs, they will cut this from his tax. In Iraq, we don't have this law. So we have to implement this law to encourage
corporate social responsibility.
Yeah, and instead to give the money to the government, to give it to the people, to help them.
Other activities.
Yeah, so.
Thank you, Mr. Jabari. Mr. Shattat, yes.
I want to say something. We thank very much the American University who give us this opportunity to have exchange in ideas, thoughts, aim, how we can reform, how we can rebuild our economy and our, country. So we don't come here to have wars in the same. So this is, I think, explanation. We don't come here to each one to show that he's right and the other people. We come here just to exchange thought, ideas, how we can reform our economy, our country, because it is the country of all the Iraqis.
Okay.
That's this explanation, yes.
We'll take very quick, have any comment? Yes.
بۆ پرسیار کە نەبوونی دەرفەتی یەکسان بۆ بەرهێنان کە تا دەوریان بینێ لە گەشەپێدانی ئابووریە لە ڕاستیە ئەمە کێشەی سەرەکیە لە کوردستانە کە دەرفەتی یەکسان نییە بۆ بەرهێنەران دوو جۆرە یەکیان هەر لە سەرەتاوە ڕێگە نادەن بۆ بەرهێنەری حەقیقی پرۆژە بەتایبەتی بۆ پرۆژە گەورەکان هەر لە سەرەتاوە ڕێگەی پێ نادەن یاخود داوای شەریکی و هاوبەشی لێەکەن و ئەگەر نەبێ ببەشێ لەم شەریکی هاوبەشیە دەرفەتی کاری نابێ ئێمە شاهدی دەیان پرۆژەی گەورە و استراتیژین کە ئەگەر بکرێ لە سلێمانی و هەولێر ئێستا کەرتی تایبەت ئەچوە قۆناغێکی گەورەوە بەڵام بەهۆی ئەم ڕێگریانەوە کە سیاسیەکان لە هەمان کاتە بزنسمانێکی ناشەرعین ڕێگە نادەن ئەم گەشە پێدانە ڕووبدا بۆ ئێمەش پێمان وایە ئەمە کێشەی سەرەکیە لە بەردەم گەشە پێدانی ئابووریە کە سیاسیەکان بە شێوەیەکی احتیکارانە دەستیان هەیە لە ناو بازاڕا و ڕێگرن لە تەنمیە ئەگەر شەریک نەبن و بەرهێنەری حەقیقیش ئامادە نییە تەنەزول بکە بۆ سیاسیەکان بۆیە بە ناچاری ئەو پرۆژە گەورە استراتیژیانە هەڵەوەشێتەوە یاخود بەرهەمی نابێت ئەگەر نا ئێستا بە شێوەیە لە شێوەکان زۆر ڕژبینیش نییە هەندێک پرۆژە هەیە بەڵام ئەم پرۆژە بە پلان و استراتیژ نەکراوە بۆ نمونە لە مەوادی ئینشاییە پارێزگای سلێمانیە توانێت تەختەی هەموو عێراق بکە شیشە چیمەنتۆیە تا دواتر بەڵام ئەمە بە پلان نەکراوە بە ڕوئیا نەکراوە و زەختی زۆر هەیە لەسەر پرۆژەکان لەبری ئەوەی ئاسانکاریان بۆ بکرێت زەختەیە لەسەر کارگەکان داوای پارەیان لێکرێت بۆیە دیدی ئێمە وایە بەتایبەت لە کوردستانە کە ئەم کەشوهەواکە لەبارە هەمین ئەگەر احتیکاری سیاسی نەمێنێ و نەوت بەکار بهێنرێ بۆ تەنمیەی اقتصادی و خاریتەی ئیستثماری دابنرێت لە چەند ساڵی ئایندا گەشە پێدانە چێتە قۆناغێکی زۆر باشترە.
Okay, and since we're here, since we'd like also to benefit from the presence of other local representatives from Mosul and from Anbar also, Mosul and Anbar. Maybe you can we can give them the mics for a few minutes, please. If you could share with us your own basically experience in terms of the challenges you're facing and the opportunities for working between the provincial government and the central government for encouraging the private sector and the economy. 3 دقائق الله يخليك.
شكرا جزيلا. في محافظة الأنبار هي محافظة واعدة وتحتوي على الكثير من المعادن والخامات، وبصراحة مضينا قدما في فترة ما قبل داعش وسنمضي قدما لفترة ما بعد داعش، ونحن في القطاع الخاص بالتنسيق مع الحكومة المحلية سواء مجلس المحافظة أو المحافظ توجد عندنا خطط وتوجد عندنا أيضا فرص استثمارية وقسم من عندنا طرح في مؤتمر الكويت، لكن هذا يعني خلينا نكون دقيقين أكثر. أكو تحديات، البيئة لا تزال مو كلها، جزء من عندها هي غير صديقة وطاردة للاستثمار بحكم البيروقراطية والفساد الإداري. تكلم الدكتور حول موضوع وان شاب ستوب، النافذة الواحدة يراد لها تفعيل أكثر. احنا مرحلة ما قبل داعش كملنا تقريبا أكثر من 32 مشروع استثماري، واحد من عندها مثلا مع شركة جبسم الفرنسية مع المستثمر الشيخ غاي سامي العبد بكلفة 12 مليون يورو، وكان المشروع قيد التشغيل، وصارت مسألة داعش والمشروع تقريبا دمر 80% من عنده. وعندنا مشاريع أيضا هسه راح نشتغل على مشروع الزجاج المسطح في محافظة الأنبار بكلفة 75 مليون دولار، وبالاتفاق مع أحد البنوك الأجنبية. في موضوع الاستثمار في محافظة الأنبار، خصوصا نتكلم عن الأنبار، وزميل الأستاذ أنيس الأغا في الموصل راح يتكلم أيضا. نعاني مشكلة التمويل. المستثمر من يجي طبعا ما عنده الكفاءة المالية اللي 100%، يجب أن يحصل على مساعدة. مثلا المصارف الأهلية والمصارف الحكومية عندها سياسة مصرفية ما تتوافق لحد الآن مع مسألة الاستثمار. احنا ما عندنا مشكلة في قانون رقم 13 سنة 2006 وتعديلاته، لا، احنا مشكلتنا وين؟ في اللي ينفذ القانون، سواء قانون الاستثمار او باقي القوانين. انا شخصيا كنت مباحثات مع CPA في بعد سقوط النظام بال 2004، وقعدنا مع السفير بول برايمر، ذهب باتجاه الخصخصة الى ابعد مدى. احنا كنا مع الخصخصة لكن مو بصورة كلية. طلبنا مقترحات انه يصير موضوع الاستثمار، ودخلنا مباحثات ومناقشات اثمرت عن هذا القانون. احنا ايضا نعاني، انا من اسوي مثلا مشروع للجبس راح نشغله، مشروع الزجاج، عندنا مثلا مشاريع البان غيرها. احنا نعيش او نعاني من حاله سياسه الاغراق. الحكومه العراقيه يجب ان تكون عندها عامل قوه على البرلمان، والعكس هو الصحيح، لتنفيذ القرارات على الارض. المنتج الصناعي ما محمي، المنتج المحلي ما محمي رغم وجود اكو قوانين. احنا بحاجه. التعرفه الجمركيه، بعض المنافذ الجمركيه تنفذ 100%، بعض المنافذ الجمركيه ما تنفذ 40%، وهذا خطا. ولا شنو هو مثلا الصفره، منفذ الصفره ياخذ جمرك، وسلطات اقليم كردستان ايضا تاخذ جمرك. صار عندي جمرك هناني، انا بدي اجيب بضاعه من المانيا تجيني عن طريق تركيا وتجي على هذا، انا بدي ادفع مرتين جمرك. هاي حاله. انا عمود لا اطول بالهذا، يعني انا وياكم اكو يعني القدح نصفه بمي، مو كليته مليان ولا كله فارغ. انا اشكركم.
شكرا كثير استاذ. تفضل استاذ انيس.
السلام عليكم.
واذا فيك تركزنا على التحديات يعني الاعماريه بالمناطق اكيد المهدمه.
حقيقه من ما اضيف شيء عن اللي قاله زميلي، بس عندنا مشاكل، واهم مشكله عدم وجود البنوك الحكوميه. فكيف نعمل في محافظه نينوى بعدم وجود بنوك حكوميه حتى تدعم حتى البنوك المحليه؟ هاي فقره اولى. الفقره الثانيه اللي موجوده، وجود مشاريع صناعيه كثيره مثل مشاريع السمنت، مشاريع الكبريت، مشاريع كثيره، لكن المشكله عدم الثقه بما آت على المستقبل، والرؤيه غير واضحه تحد من العمل. المشكله الثالثه وهي انه دوائر الاستثمار في محافظه نينوى تعقيدات كثيره بموجب القوانين الموجوده، حتى يحصل المستثمر على إيجاد استثمار ياخذ وقت طويل، مع عدم وجود قانون انه المستثمر اللي ياخذ استثمار معين لازم يكون خلال فتره معينه يكمل الاستثمار ماله، والا يسحب او يترك هذا العمل. فموجود مشاكل كثيره وطويله، بس اهم شيء البنك، الرؤيه غير واضحه، والروتين القاتل في الدوائر الدوله، وعدم كفاءه بعض الموظفين في الدوله حاليا. عدم يعني تفوت تحكي مع موظف في موضوع معين وهو ما جوابه غير مقنع. عدم الكفاءه مهمه، هذه مهمه جدا. ولذا احنا حاليا في اتحاد رجال الاعمال عم نقوم دورات تدريبيه كثيره، وعنحاول نصلح بعض الامور، نفترع المناطق، وعملنا دراسه كبيره عن المشاريع الصغيره والمتوسطه والكبيره، متعاونين مع المحافظه، مجلس المحافظه، مع الاقضيه والنواحي، نزور القائم مقام، نزور هذا، ومن الله التوفيق وشكرا.
Thank you very much for shedding a light on examples of sort of the challenges and what the business sector, how is engaging with local government. Maybe I will give each one of you maybe 1 or 2 minutes really to sort of crystallize some of the messages, and maybe if you have suggestions where we should be focused to improve sort of the synergy between central, provincial government work for improving economic growth and private sector development, I would appreciate it. I will cut you on 2 minutes.
بدي كما لشوارشوي دستوري لشوارشوي دستوري عراقا هريمي كردستان وبغداد ريك بكون وببي دستوري عراق ده هاتر فيدرالي كان ريك بخيتوا وحصي حقيقي هريمي كردستان در بكري الدور لها مو تعصبيكي طائفي ونتوي ولشوارشوي هريمي كردستان وعراقي شا دەسڵاتی زیاتر بگدرێ بە پارێزگاکان و ئەنجومەنی پارێزگاکان بەهێزکرێ بە شێوەیەکی لامەرکەزی و پێمان وایە ئەمە شاڕێگەی دەربازبوونە لەم قۆناغە و گەشەپێدانی بۆ قۆناغەکانی ئایندە دروستەکە. سوپاس.
Yes, I want to give you now today very beautiful image about what we are doing. I know it is very difficult situation, but I can tell you we started the change. Maybe they are very simple actions, but this is the start. Just to answer my colleague, my brother, who spoke about the funding in Ambar. I agree with you. Our banking system doesn't help the investor to do investment or doesn't help the private sector. So we started now. We will develop National Bank of Investment with capital of $1 billion US dollars. This $1 billion will come from the saving in Rafidin Bank, Rashid Bank, TBI, from the Communication Authority, from the Retirement Fund, from the National Social Security Fund, and this the most important mission of this bank, how the investors and the people who want to do some business can find fund from this. By the way, the management of this bank will not be from public. Now we are working with the World Bank, how we can select the qualified people who can manage this bank. The other issue that my brother from Mosul mentioned, I agree with you, but as I mentioned before, now we developed since 3 months the High Ministerial Committee of Investment chaired by Prime Minister. This committee shorthand all the authorities from all the ministries with this committee. Decision will be signed by Prime Minister. Then we have another parallel committee called follow-up committee to follow the issue. We hope with such changes we can help you. I can tell you that all the problem will be solved with the short time, but I think we started the way of the change, and with the help of others we have to do something, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Shaddad.
Yeah. I think the private sector, they have to create something new in Iraq and to depend on themselves, not waiting for the government to offer for them facilities or something. They have to create a strong lobby to put the pressure over the parliament, to put the pressure over the government to issue the laws who help them to attract the international investor to Iraq. The Iraqi government, I think they are so busy with many things, and the investment is not their priority. But for the people, the investment is the first priority, because by international investment, we can create jobs for the young generation. The government, I don't think in the next 3 years will hire any one, because they don't have vacant places. So unfortunately, the private sector, they make the money inside Iraq and they go invest outside Iraq. This is also a very important point. You have to understand it. Now we have, if you go to Jordan, the biggest investor in Jordan, they are Iraqis. You go to UAE, the biggest investor also Iraqis. You go to Beirut also. They have to trust the local market. They have to trust the country who make the money from. So it's unfair. You make money in one place and you go spend the money in the other place. So they have to trust themselves, they have to trust their government, they have to trust the system. So by this way, the cooperation between the private sector, between the central government, between the central bank, and they have to stop the corruption. You know, I know very big investor in Iraq, very big businessman. They don't give one penny corruption, and they are very successful because they resist in the beginning to give $1 to any employees. They asked them, they took them to the court, they took them to the, everywhere. They try to stop their business, but they are resisting. They say, we do our job, we are a professional, we are contractors since tens of years, so we don't pay corruption. And they succeed. So also the businessman, they have to stop to give a bribe to the officials.
Thank you. Frank. Very quickly.
Thank you. One of the themes of this discussion was the conditions which are vital to the successful transformation of the economy. Two things are going to drive Iraq's economy. One is the price of oil, which for a variety of reasons is probably going to stay in the $60 region for the next decade, and the other is demographics. Every year, about 1 million Iraqis become old enough to work. Adjusting for retirements and deaths and the low labor force participation rate among women, the country needs to create 1/3 jobs every year just to keep the pool of unemployed from getting larger. It has not done that. It has not done that since 2013. For the reasons you discussed, the government is not going to be able to employ 1/3 more people every year for the foreseeable future. We have to unleash the private sector. And the private sector, I don't think, is constrained by lack of government finance or by lack of infrastructure. It's constrained by the hostility of the government towards the private sector. If you reduce that hostility, the special economic zones was a means to an end. It's not an end itself. It's to give us an opportunity to see what it might be like if we reduce the regulatory hostility. Thank you.
Thank you. Very quickly.
Yes, very quickly. I would say that deregulation or review of regulation more broadly would be a better approach than economic zones, so that it's across the board. I think to improve the banking sector, let the international banks in a little bit, open a small window. It will bring competition and they will shape up. The government should do a program review of all its program and maybe eliminate what is useless and retrain personnel. Should do a privatization program of SOEs, state-owned enterprises, and get rid of the dead wood. But for that, you need to be able to create jobs where people can go to if they lose their government job. Or you have to have programs to recycle people into new jobs, into early retirement, golden handshake packages, and that kind of stuff. That existed elsewhere. We've done this in Canada several times. Program review and the reduction of the workforce in the government, because I'm told that the government workforce increased threefold since 2003. So that's huge. And you're, as this gentleman was, I forget your, Frank was saying, like you've got 1/3 new employees, new jobs to create every year. They cannot be in the public sector. So you are condemned to develop the private sector. And I was in Kuwait City, and I was thinking, with its riches, with its 2 rivers, its oil, this could be Iraq in 10 to 20 years with good governance. And that starts with the parliament is very fractious and sectarian and ethnic base for political parties people are starting to rebrand themselves away from that, and that's the way of the future. That's a wave.
Thank you very much, Ila. And maybe, okay, yes, Mr. Shah. Just because you are from the government.
Yes. For this reason, my government want to do healthy investment, because we think with the healthy investment we can rebuild the international trust for my country. We can develop a lot of job opportunity from that, and also we can help the country to have, for example, help us to build the infrastructure, another issue. So we think for us, the healthy investment is one of our most important, aim for my government. Yes.
So I would like to thank
yes,
thank
I
everybody.
said healthy.
Yeah, exactly. I think if I would like just very quickly to summarize, I think it's very clear that there is consensus on the sort of need to move in the direction, of course, of further privatization, but maybe with a big caveat that transfer of ownership from public sector to private sector will only yield positive results if it's accompanied by a good regulatory environment that promotes fair and just competition. And I think this is also important even when we think of devolving further power to lower levels of or other levels of government, move towards subsidiarity, while building capacity, which will be essential basically to continue improving quality of regulatory framework. I cannot but thank you enough, but also thank everybody for the interesting questions. And we'll continue with the last and final session immediately, I think.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you.
If everyone could stay in their seats, you may be excused for 2 to 3 minutes if you would like. But we're just going to move straight into the final panel, which is a conversation about economic solutions for the government of Iraq, and the Kurdistan regional government. So please do not stray far. This is not a break. Yeah. And if you are in the last conversation, if you could come to the front so we could put on your microphone.